Right, hello. Thank you for asking me to come to talk to you today. Well, okay, you didn't ask me to come and talk to you, I know, but I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to look at some of the presentations I've given before. Um, these are shortened versions. Most of the time the talk lasts about an hour, and I think this will be cut down to about 15 minutes because I'm going to divide them into sections. If you hear a funny snoring noise in the background, it's my dogs. And if you start hearing a tippy tappy noise, they've woken up and they're walking around in the lino. You probably didn't need to know any of that. Perhaps now is a good point to tell you I won't be editing these. I'm just gonna. Oh, there's a tappy noise. That I won't be editing these. I'm just going to record them and post them as they are. So let's start. So as I said, this is Taken Better Photographs. It's going to last about 15 minutes. I'm going to consider what is a good photograph. And then for this episode, this session, we're going to look at landscape photography and how we can improve our landscape photography. But first, a quiz. I've taken photographs of things really close up, macro photographs of things, and I'm going to ask you at the end to see if you can identify them. No, I'm going to ask you now, aren't I, to see if you can identify them. And at the end, I'll give you the answers. So what's that? I'm going to have to resist saying, so what's that for each photo now, aren't I? So what do you think that is? I still want to say, what's that? What's that? See, that's all I can think of now. I'll tell you the answer for this at the end, but my favourite answer that I've ever had was a wrong answer, and I'll try and remember to tell you that at the end. I should have cleaned that one better. There's a clue. Lots of clues there. Right, we'll come back to those. So what does make a good photograph? I think that's a good place to start. Now, I'm not pretending that I'm the best photographer in the world. There are definitely better than me, and there's definitely worse. But I am experienced. I've been doing it full time now for about 10 years, so I can help with that. 2 years ago, I did a post on Facebook and asking people what they thought made a good photograph. Some useful answers. Gary said Batman camera angles. I think that's interesting because in the small camera club that we have, one of the challenges that we set one month was taking photographs from a different angle, and it's amazing how useful it is to take a photograph not just at sort of standing height, but go down low or go higher. Get a little bit of drama into the photograph. Mike said composition, and we're going to be looking at that in a bit. Katrina Davis, whoever that is, said, it's my wife, said the moment, which I think is useful because it is about, certainly most of my work is wedding photography, and there are definitely moments that you must capture. I'm going to rather paranoidly look now to see if I'm sure it's recording. Mike has recommended that we need a camera. Excellent. Roger's added to that, take the lens cap off. These are all useful things. There is nothing worse than standing in front of 200 people, asking them to smile, and then realising you haven't taken the camera cap off, the lens cap off. I have done that. Kath has said patience. You sometimes have to play the long. It's definitely true. You have to be patient. I think photographing children in a studio is about being patient and being supportive and kind to them to make them feel comfortable. I can imagine that it's pretty threatening to have, a stranger, a big stranger, staring at you and trying to make you smile. So get them comfortable. Try and be funny. Try and make them feel relaxed. It makes a big difference. And don't rush as well. I normally allow at least an hour for studio photographs for children. Some of that, a lot of that hour can just be getting them to feel comfortable. And then you may, I've never failed, I don't think, but sometimes if the child for any reason, might not be feeling great or it just might be wary, just give them time. It really makes a difference, and don't rush them. I had one person once came and said that they could make their child they'd practice the smile, that every time this person clicked their fingers, their little girl would smile. I could see what she was thinking, but it does look forced. It doesn't look natural. So natural smiles are important. Always have a camera with you. Yes, somebody once said that the best camera you can get is the one that you have with you. Lynn said, keep as natural as possible. Yes, it's true. Pretty much just chatted about that. Alexis says about lighting, I was going to say it's a dark art, understanding lighting, but that doesn't make sense, does it? But what I will say is that one of the things I love about photography is learning about light. Over the years, you just learn little bits all the time. Dog sneezed then, okay? You learn little bits all the time, and it all makes a difference that you know, that you consider the light in. Dilwyn says detail, that's very important. Terry said any photograph that brings a smile to someone's face. Yes, that's absolutely true. Lisa has said capture in a moment, as we said earlier. Dillis has said advantage of personal. My contribution would be to build and maintain a certain connection prior to and during the day. That's definitely true. This idea that I've said before about making people comfortable. Charlotte has said, I think a good photographer is some photographer. I think a good photographer is someone who can connect with people he or she is photographing. I think that's very true. Okay, important skills from my experience. You do need technical skills. You do need to be able to control your camera, and the dreaded manual mode. If you can learn how to use, shutters, understand shutter speeds, apertures, etc., that'll be a good thing. But I think almost more importantly is have an artistic eye. So as I said before, we'll look at these if I get anybody watching this one, I may do future sessions on the technical side of the photography. Artistic, this is what we're going to look at more now. What looks good? Composition, there are composition guides and not rules. Colours and contrast, what is beautiful. It's obviously people have devoted their lives to understanding this, and I think it's useful to consider. What is dramatic? I don't know. Oh, I see what you mean. What makes a dramatic image? Consider using black and white. The amount of times that a photograph isn't working, I've found, and then you change it to black and white, and all of a sudden it becomes a great photo. Textures are very often good to photograph in black and white, and as I said, it can save an image. Sometimes I see people go through a stage that they oversaturate their photographs, and so they're really bright colours, and that can be unpleasant, really. So avoid it. How to improve? Take lots of photographs, look at lots of photographs, and decide what you like. Decide what you don't like. So look at the photographs. People know when you look at a photograph, they automatically know what's a good photograph and not a good photograph. But try and actually think about why it's a good photograph, what it is about it that you like that makes it a good photograph. And then likewise, for photographs you don't like. I remember years ago I spent hours and hours looking on the website Flickr, loads of photographs on there, and doing a for each photograph. Why do I like this? And so if it's a portrait I like, then consider that in the future if I take a portrait it'll look like that. And if it's something I don't like, then avoid that mistake. Read loads, look at the great photographers, Ansel Adams, Don McCullin, Jay Maisel, Annie Leibovitz. They're inspiring. And things like YouTube nowadays, it's full of information. This is useful, I think. This is a graph of how people perceive their own skill over time. So this is how skilled somebody thinks they are, and this is time. So I definitely found at the beginning that when you start getting lots of positive feedback, you start to think, oh, I'm okay at this. I think I'm quite a good photographer. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you see your faults, and that happens. Your confidence dips, and then over time it'll go up and up and up. Obviously, the skill, you are improving, and I'm finding even after 10 years, not even if that's not that long, is it? But after 10 years, the last wedding I photographed, I learned something new then. So what do you photograph? Well, divide them into the 4 P's: places, people in places, and petals. Okay, that last bit's a bit of a cheat for flowers and still life, really. So for now, I'm going to look at places, so landscapes. There are composition rules, we said. Things like lead-in lines, diagonal lines, rule of thirds, symmetry, and patterns. So we look at those now. So lead-in lines, it's nice to have a line in the photograph that you can sort of follow in, and it gives the photograph depth. Depth of field is important in a landscape. In that, I mean that there's a lot in focus. So you need what's in the foreground and the background in focus. So we will look at the technical side more later, but basically to achieve that, it's small aperture on your camera, and that's a big number, so it's like f11 or something. Time of day, that's so important. I know that I'm not a full-time landscape photographer, but I know that the full-time landscape photographer, often they'll study where the sun's going to rise, and they'll do their research online before they go to the venue. So you can plan a lot of it before you go. So this is just an example. This is taken about midnight, 11 midnight, when they lit the castle up for the Welsh football team were doing well in a tournament. This is Caerwelly Castle, of course. The reason I haven't included these photographs because I think they're particularly good, but I think it's because they provide some kind of lesson. Always turn around. On the same night, I turned round, walked along a little bit, turned around, and could see that the church was looking nice as well, St Mary's Church in Caerwelly. So the whole point of this is don't just plump for the one shot. Have a little look around, have a walkabout, and consider your options. This is from Ferryside, the Llanstefan Castle. So always consider cropping. I mention this later as well, but cropping may make a difference. Now I know some hardened photographers say, well, that's a mistake because the dog shouldn't be walking out of the photograph. It's a bit distracting that it's walking out. Should be walking in. There we are, like that. That doesn't bother me so much, but it's easy to correct. Diagonal lines, leading lines gives you depth of the picture. So again, rather than just taking it straight on, go down with the rope. And I'm not at my head height here. I could have got lower actually, I think, couldn't I? But fairly low to take that shot. More lines. I sometimes think that going out to take a photograph is like fishing, where sometimes you'll catch something and sometimes you won't. This day I arrived, this is Buryport Harbour. I arrived at the harbour and it was bland. There was nothing worth photographing. The sky was just grey, and I was literally about to get back into my car and I could see these storm clouds coming. And this scene was only there for about, I don't know, 20 minutes, maybe more, a little bit more, and it went, but I was just in the right place at the right time. Consider cropping, as I mentioned earlier. That's the previous shot, and it's amazing how a crop can make a difference to a photograph. Go to a different position, like I mentioned earlier. This little, is that a monument? A sculpture? A thing. It's a thing. So if you just move and stand behind a thing, it makes it look a bit different, doesn't it? Ferryside Beach, I showed Ferryside Beach earlier, but this is obviously much wider lens used, and I'm closer to the water. But you can see I'm close to the water. I don't need to tell you that, do I? But just walk about, change where you are. Times of day can make a difference. There's still lots we can do at night, and star and astrophotography is a specialization of its own. I have done a little bit of it, and maybe we could do a session on that later. I sometimes think sunsets are a bit of a cheat because the colours and the beauty it's there, but I think one of the secrets of great photography is photograph beautiful things, so that's okay, isn't it? Reflections are often interesting. Do look out for the reflections. You can see there's a bit of ripple in the river water here. Sometimes you can be lucky and there's no wind and you get a really still, cool reflection. So do you know where this is? If we were actually in a room together now, we could spend time talking about where this is. But this was when I had a student come for work experience, and that student, Hannah, found this for me, and it's Cwm Gavin, and there's a famous poem about it there by T. Llew Jones. Paxton's Tower. Can I go back? Yes. I was on my way to photograph the brilliant band, the Antidepressants, this day. It was a Sunday. You don't need to know it's a Sunday, do you? And it's because I had a camera and that I'd noticed that scene that I was able to take it. So it is true, but best camera is the one you've got with you. To finish, really, one of the tests, I think, is when you're taking a photograph, just decide, will this look good? Will this photograph look good in a frame? Is it going to look good on a wall? And so here's some of my framed, this one's not in a frame, is it? But you know what I mean? There's our little girl, and there's me in the reflection. Not very good, but there we are. This is in the Prince Philip Hospital. These are in the Ashburnham Hotel, and we've got more in Pembrey. Now these are my photographs in X-ray department in Llangwili Hospital. One of the challenges of this is that these are 1 meter by 1 meter in size, so I had to make sure that the focus was good enough to go to that size. And now I say that this is obviously a phone photograph, which is not brilliantly in focus, but you know, take my point. So let's look at the answers that we did before very quickly. What do you think that is? Is broccoli. What do you think that is? I'm going to have to stop saying what do you think that is. It's a clothes peg. Clues? Clues are there? Those aren't really a clue, but those. Banana. Can you hear my dog on the line? What's that? My favourite guess ever was that it was the big button and little button for a toilet flush, which it's not. It's a sharpener. It's a double sharpener. What's that? Paintbrush. Tape measure. Orange. Shishun. Scissors. What's that? See, it's easy if you know, isn't it? But, you know. Sellotape. This is one of my favourite ones. I've talked to WI a lot, and some people in WI have often said to me, it's a sewing machine. Now, I'm not finding that funny in a sexist way. I'm finding it funny is that we see what we're familiar with, and some of those groups had been using sewing machines recently, and so you do see what you're familiar with, don't you? It's a stapler. Is that a stapler? Yes, a stapler. I was wondering whether there's a stapler remover, but it's a stapler. Battery. I'm not sponsored by Halfords. I think this is the last one. It's a crayon. Oh no, it's not the last one. Great, thank you very much. I hope that's been of some use. If it is, we'll do it again, another one. Thanks a lot.